Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Thursday. This is Aura Vasquez, and today I have a very special guest and a very special talk. As you see, last week we had a pretty exciting celebration around the immigrant rights community and the DACA decision that is not anti-constitutional, so that it actually a lot of our fellow neighbors that receive DACA are able to stay here legally for a little while longer until we find a real path for them to stay here. So I'm joining today with Justino Mata, and our conversation is going to be around the resistance and also our immigrant rights edition. So let me welcome Justino. Hi.
Hi, Aura. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation, by the way.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you so much. And you're somebody that I have so much admiration for, and somebody that has been so involved in the immigrant rights movement, specifically in DACA, being yourself a recipient. But the conversation today is not only about DACA, but also how, defunding the police and how police brutality, and also how reforming the criminal justice system really also affects people of color, and how this is tied to immigration.
Absolutely.
Which I think that sometimes we don't really put those two and two together. But how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm doing pretty good. Again, for those that are joining, my name is Justino. I'm an immigrant rights activist. I'm also a DACA recipient. I've been in the country since summer of 2000. And in general, I guess 1 week ago, today is Thursday. Wow, time flies. 1 week ago, we had already received, the news about what the Supreme Court had decided. So I guess, how do I feel now? I feel more at peace. I feel more at ease, definitely with less pressure, and absolutely, with less stress and anxiety than 1 week ago. Yeah, but we're gonna go, I guess, more into that in a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like to remind people that being a DACA recipient is it has a huge history. Yeah. And I came to this country 25 years ago. I'm from Colombia. I was also an undocumented student, and a lot of stuff happened on immigration. So I'm excited to talk to you about your own experience with the immigrant rights and just in general with the criminal justice system, which it also encompasses ICE.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what's been your experience.
Yeah, so I guess I've been today. I was thinking about where to begin when it comes to the topics and how to talk about this specific topic, because it's really broad. Like, there's a lot that is happening today, and there's a lot that the administration is doing to attack the immigrant community. So to begin, I think I'll begin with the call of the immigrant rights movement. So I joined this group of what we call the OG veterans. So that is a group of undocumented immigrant youth, essentially former undocumented immigrant rights activists who we've been involved in this space for a very long time. And we joined as a coalition to basically, we wrote an open letter to the immigrant rights movement saying, these are the things that we need to do. Like, there are things that we cannot continue to do when it comes to fighting for justice and fighting for freedom for the undocumented immigrant community. First of all, we said we need to join the Black Lives Matter movement. We need to join the call to defund the police, because calling to defund the police, we should see it hand in hand with our call to abolish ICE. Because those, in many similar ways, they're the same thing. Let's remember that ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's what it stands for. It didn't exist before 2001. ICE is a creation out of 9/11. It came out of
Right.
xenophobia, racism, and against, it came out this xenophobic sentiment against not only immigrants, but people from the Middle East, from Islamophobia as well. So ICE is a creation of the Bush administration. It's a
Yes.
creation, comes from that white supremacist mentality. So that's one thing that in our open letter to the immigrant rights movement, we're telling not only immigrant rights organizations, but the whole immigrant community as a whole. We need
Yeah.
to join forces with Black-led organizations, with Black activists who have been the ones leading this larger movement for liberation. So one, joining the cause to defund the police. Second, continue to push to abolish ICE, and of course, demanding for Trump to resign. Trump should not be an option in the November ballot, given everything that he has done, that his administration has done, not only to the immigrant community, but all to the other oppressed and historically marginalized communities. Trump should not be an option in the November elections. So those are some of the three demands that we're asking of the immigrant rights movement. There's definitely more. Another one is like tackling anti-Blackness and racism within non-Black Latinx communities. That's something that we also need to address across Latin America. And Latin America is really broad. And many different countries, traditions, etc. But one thing is common: this history of colonialism and imperialism across Latin America has also embedded this white supremacist mentality, which is reflected in many different colorism, in many different layers of society all over Latin America. So part of this call to defund the police, it also involves demanding for abolishing ICE, but also being more reflective and also trying to see how we play a role in white supremacy, and also trying to dismantle that as well. So that's one thing that I definitely wanted to mention before.
Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah. It's important to zoom in on something that oftentimes people disregard, which is we have the same systems that are oppressing Black people are also oppressing immigrants of color.
Yes.
This is not the same as immigrants from Denmark. No offense to them, or from the Scandinavia, or from Germany. This is not the same. This is we don't treat them the same. And sadly, we have a president right now leading this country.
Yes.
That is anti-Latino. Let's just name it for what it is: an anti-brown Latino. He oftentimes talks about Mexico. Even when he was running for office, he mentioned that Latinos are, were rapists. Actually, Mexicans, specifically Mexicans, are rapists and completely creating this bias and this stereotype about a certain community that has contributed so much, to this country. So number one, I want people, if anything, in this talk to go go away with the idea that the same systems that are oppressing some folks are oppressing others. This is no different. So friends, if you just woke up to this news, let me deliver them to you. Yes. But this is the same people. Now, of course, ICE comes from that system. The same system that was created to to police us, which is not meant to protect us. Now, ICE is not really about keeping our borders safe.
Correct.
So maybe you can dive a little bit more about what your ideas about behind ICE, because I often talk about this. And if we wanted safety, we have one of the most advanced military complex in the world.
Correct.
We have infrared. We have drones technology. We have, body heat. We can detect body heat. So this whole thing about building a wall is pure bullshit. Let me just tell you all that it's just creating fear on another community that is fearful of people that look different than them. And I'm sorry if you are a white person or if you are a white ally, or even if you're not a white ally, wake up, because this is what this government is doing. And they're investing, diverting millions, billions of dollars on building a wall that is already there.
Yes.
There's already wall there. There's already drone technology. There's all sorts of things that they're doing just so that they fuel their political agenda. So this is what's going on with ICE. But please, let's talk a little bit more about what ICE really is serving and what was the purpose of creating ICE, which is not, again, it's not to protect us.
Correct. Absolutely. And good that you say that ICE is definitely not meant to protect people. It's meant to continue to push this white supremacist agenda that has always existed in this government. And along with ICE, it's also important to mention the existence of two other things. One of them is something called 287G. And 287G is essentially this policy program that allows collaboration between the police and ICE, and also something known as secure community. Which also allows this collaboration between police and ICE. So these two programs, what in essence do is that they allow for police departments to sort of behave like ICE agents and to do the work for ICE agents. So if at one point in time an undocumented immigrant gets arrested, then they go ahead and share their fingerprints with ICE. That's right. ICE then proceeds to say, hey, like, we don't have their fingerprints, or perhaps we do have their fingerprints and we want to place a hold on this individual. So then what ICE does is that it tells the police department, go ahead and, hold this person, and we're going to go ahead and pick them up, next week, or perhaps tomorrow, or perhaps today. So these two programs, 287G and Secure Communities, contrary to their names, they actually make our communities insecure.
Not safe.
Exactly,
right?
Not safe.
Because people don't want to report crime. Exactly. People don't want to participate. Exactly. They're scared because you can end up in the system by just crossing the wrong street.
Exactly.
By having a broken light in your tail.
Absolutely. Or perhaps being a street vendor. And those are some of the most common stories I heard in the very beginning here in California when those two programs were in full effect. Actually, under the Obama administration, that's when we saw the most negative impact here in California.
The most deportation.
Yes, absolutely. So we saw at that point in time many street vendors getting criminalized, and as a result, getting arrested for not having a license. Perhaps undocumented immigrants were driving without a license, and then them getting arrested, and then falling into this bigger net of ICE. So ICE has been expanding its reach more and more over the last couple of years. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that ICE did not exist before 2001. So when we think about what does a future look like, we have to think and remember that ICE did not exist. So if we want to imagine a better world and a better future and reimagine what society and justice should look like, let's remember that ICE did not exist, right? So that's where we should be, begin thinking. Let's remember what the world looked like before 2001 without ICE. So I think that's a good starting point. And ICE, one thing that you mentioned earlier is that is absolutely true. ICE and CBP, they target people who are indigenous, people, undocumented Black immigrants. So actually, undocumented Black immigrants are 3 times more likely to get arrested, detained, and deported by ICE. So even within the immigrant rights movement, specifically within this world of the intersections of being Black, of being undocumented, those play a bigger role, because then you have these two different identities getting criminalized the most. So undocumented Black immigrants get criminalized the most. And then also indigenous folks. So a lot of indigenous people from Central America that have come over to the US don't get the protections they don't, that their asylum claims don't get processed. And actually, talking about asylum, today the Supreme Court delivered a huge blow to the immigrant rights movement. So in a decision of 7-2, the Supreme Court essentially sided with the Trump administration in their efforts to essentially fast track the removal of undocumented immigrants, specifically those seeking asylum.
Yeah.
And that's pretty bad.
Which is, let me just emphasize, because I see the trolls coming through, and
Yeah.
they also deserve to be educated.
Correct.
And it's not illegal to come to this country seeking asylum.
Correct.
It's not illegal to come from whatever place that you come from to ask for, to come here. Mm-hmm. Now, the other side of this coin for my trolls that are here is that these folks are feeding you right now. Mm-hmm. We are in the midst of the craziest pandemic or the most health crisis that any of us have experienced by far. These are people that are oftentimes discriminated against in their own country, that they're escaping violence. They come here to look asylum. A lot of them work in the fields growing our food. Okay? So next time you guys think about immigrants and you start saying that they're breaking the law and that they're bad people, think about what you're eating next time, and think about how that bad people are feeding you and your families right now. So I just wanted to put it out there in context for folks that are watching.
Yes, and to add to that, to what you just said, remembering that we actually live in stolen land. This is land that was stolen from Native Americans.
Absolutely.
So the creation of this quote unquote United States of America is founded on the blood of indigenous people and Black people from Africa.
Right.
So for those trolls that are currently jumping on the chat and saying xenophobic things or just plain ignorant things, it's definitely a good time to also remind them of the horrific history of this country.
It's a painful history for a lot of folks also to recognize that it's within them. Mm-hmm. That there are race as races, as the system that is perpetrating this. This is a huge problem, guys, because I want to see all of us kicking out all the immigrants here that are doing the work that a lot of people don't want to do. And I want to see those that complain that they're breaking the law doing them, and see how you like that. I want to see you work in the fields for 14, 16 hours a day and cleaning homes and taking care of babies. I want to see that happening and paying taxes and not getting anything in return. Because that's the other side of the coin that is, I feel like, is really unfair. And this is why we need a real comprehensive immigration reform that is going to really benefit not just immigrants, but also our economy. Because they're already, they're already contributing.
Yeah.
So how do we integrate them to our system in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, and that's another thing that we're also, trying to remind people of at the current moment, like during the current pandemic. It's, I was reading information, and I believe also the United Farm Workers published this information recently, in which I think 40%, between 40 and 50% of all tomatoes that are grown and sold in the United States, those 40 to 50% of those tomatoes, they're hand-picked by an undocumented farm worker. So for those trolls, white supremacists, currently eating a delicious salad, and you happen to be, if you have a tomato on the side, and even the salad itself, is very likely that your food was hand-picked by an undocumented farm worker.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to throw it away? Are you going to deport your food? Like, that's one thing to remind people that there's this, dissonance in how people view the world. And when it comes to this economic contribution, it's true. Like, I've been paying taxes for over a decade now. And the fact that I'm a DAC recipient, the fact that I'm undocumented, it means that we're paying billions and billions of dollars into this system that at the end of the day, we don't have access to, because we don't have legal immigration permanent status. So that means
Right.
that if we wanted to access like retirement plans, we can't do that. Like we cannot access social security benefits. Undocumented immigrants.
Or even right now with COVID-19,
Correct.
a lot of undocumented folks couldn't get unemployment, of
Correct.
course,
Absolutely.
or even any support
Yes,
for
absolutely.
them and their families when they have contributed their fair share. So
Correct.
it's worth noticing too.
Absolutely. So yes, many undocumented people are currently working during the pandemic. We're paying taxes, and we cannot get those unemployment benefits, specifically federal unemployment benefits. So that's one thing to remind people about. And then the other point that I definitely want to make is that even at the end of the day, undocumented immigrants, we shouldn't just be viewed from the lenses of our economic contributions,
Right.
because we're more than dollars. We're more than our ability to contribute into society in the form of our labor, or how much money we make. That just given how much we've tried to tell the system to recognize and value the contributions that we're making in every single way, that I think we are at a place where I think we're getting to that point where we're saying, you know what, we're done trying all these different methods.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I think the problems are very systemic, and white supremacy won't see us as human beings. They won't see
Right.
us as full human beings. So trying to make arguments about our economic contributions, or perhaps how we contribute to society in different ways, I think white supremacists, specifically the current administration, they won't even pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So
Well, also
yeah.
because as you're sharing is similar to colonialism. The fact that they came to this land, stole this land.
Correct.
They didn't come here and wrote a letter to the indigenous people of that lived in this land before and said, "We're coming and we want to be your friend." They came and took everything: their culture, their women, their land. Actually, learn from our own customs here. And the other thing that I just want to really uplift with now the conversation around the criminal justice system and reforming the criminal justice system is that they're targeting brown people too, guys. And a lot of brown people are Afro-Latinos, dark color, dark skin color. So, it's kind of interesting to see it all merge, because again, at the beginning, we started talking about how one system, really affects all of the rest. Absolutely. That is now white. So again, if you are just listening to this and you're shocked, I'm sorry, but I think the issue here is white supremacy, and how this immigrant rights issue has been taken to polarize people in this country and to use it as a political, weapon, basically.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think when I think about the connection between the police and ICE, I like to remember people of what the police are doing in many other different states, right? California has done a lot of progress over the last decade when it comes to providing even more protection, such as the fact that we passed California, driver licenses for undocumented immigrants. So there's tens of thousands of undocumented immigrants who are able to now apply and get tested to have driver licenses. And before that existed, police departments across the state of California, they would set up random checkpoints on the excuse that they were checking for people driving under the influence, which is bullshit, because they predominantly targeted communities that are predominantly immigrant, predominantly people of color, because they know that that's where many undocumented immigrants live. So when I think about the connections between ICE and the police, they're basically siblings. They're one and the same. They're the
Yeah,
same side of what's called the same side of the same coin. I think that's the saying, the phrase.
it's the
The
same
same
point.
side of the same coin. Yeah, they're basically the same bullshit. That's how I like to
Well, it comes from the
paraphrase it
same
and summarize
system.
it. Yeah,
From
they're the
from the
same system.
system that you're safe, but you're really not safe.
Correct. So we don't need them. Like I'm following the lead of Black-led organizations and Black activists across the nation who are offering better solutions, better alternatives to what we have at the moment. And I was seeing actually this graphic today. There was this, there's been a lot of campaigns here in LA trying to defund the police and get those funds into places where we absolutely need them. We know that teachers don't get paid a lot. We have a lot of people working. Another perfect example, hospitals. Hospitals don't have enough PPE, protective equipment. And we have a lot of doctors and nurses, reusing their face masks, and having to use plastic bags to cover and protect themselves. And I was watching this graphic, the breakdown of how much police officers in the Los Angeles school district get paid. And I think there's about more than 10 police officers that are getting paid more than $200,000 each.
Yeah.
In comparison to like 40,000, 50,000 that teachers get paid. Yeah.
Yes, I saw that.
And it's ridiculous because we have teachers who have to spend their own money to buy school supplies. We shouldn't, in the most wealthiest country in the world, we shouldn't be living in these conditions in which educators are forced to use their own money to buy supplies.
Or nurses are forced to buy their own PPE.
Yes, absolutely. So it's just whenever I see these things, whenever I see these statistics, I just, it's not that I cannot believe it. It's just that it's way too much. It's a little bit overwhelming because I'm thinking if more people were to see, these numbers and understand the meaning behind, the fact that we live in a city and just in a country that puts more value on physical things, that puts more value on police departments and money. Yeah.
And money and empower.
People should be frustrated. People should be extremely angry. And I think, I'm really excited to see a lot of people channel that anger and frustration towards, abolishing these systems.
Organizing and learning.
Absolutely.
Well, let me just pause there and welcome people to ask questions. Guys, we're having a conversation about the resistance, the immigration edition with Justino Mora, who is an activist on the immigrant rights space. If you have questions, please send us in the comments. We would love to hear from you also. And we are speaking about the intersection between defunding the police, the work around DACA, and just the systemic issue that we're facing, post-colonialism. And I mean, we haven't gone there. We haven't gone to, the other factor, which is the money and politics. And I would love to go there. And earlier I was saying that immigration has been utilized now as a weapon for political means.
Correct. Yeah.
So Democrats, Republicans, and at the end of the day, there are people with real lives suffering out there. So we have a question from someone asking if we can talk about the detention centers. I can see the rest of your question, so please post the rest of your question at some point. But basically, let's talk about detention centers and what has been going on with the people being separated with their families and such.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So detention centers at the moment, they're this petri dish of basically the perfect place to get COVID and to suffer from COVID-19 and potentially also die from COVID-19. And why is that the case? well, I guess why is that the case? So at the current moment, there's about approximately 30,000 people who are still being held in detention centers. And these
And
detention
in the
centers,
border,
no, all over the U.S.
all over the U.S.
All over the U.S. Yeah, and these detention centers, they're basically immigrant concentration camps. That's what they are.
And they're
Because
private.
people, absolutely, like a
They're
lot
private.
of them, I think
Okay.
50% of them are like privately owned immigration camps, and these places are, disgusting, inhumane, immoral places. Like they shouldn't exist. Why? Because first of all, crossing the border is not illegal. It's not against the law. The first thing that I want to remind people is like this border is like an imaginary thing that was conceived by this white supremacist government. And in fact, like let's look at the current law. Crossing the border is actually a misdemeanor. So people shouldn't be placed in these detention immigration camps just for that. Secondly, the levels, I guess, the propensity of getting infected by COVID is really high because they're not providing, hand sanitizers. They're not providing, the equipment for people to, wash their hands and sanitize their hands and sanitize the place. People are being kept placed in closed rooms, in closed rooms in these places. So that increases the chances that people are going to get infected with virus.
Yeah.
And one perfect place that I'd like to point out, just since we live here in California, the Adelanto Detention Center.
Yeah.
And Adelanto, there's the level of human rights abuses that are happening there on a day-to-day basis. Is just ridiculous. I've been able to in the past to work with immigrants who have sort of come out from the detention center and who have told me like horrible stories of ICE agents forcing immigrants to brush and clean toilets with toothbrushes, of people getting pepper sprayed, of people getting forced to remove their clothing and be naked and then getting sprayed with either cold or hot water. So there's these places, there's torture taking place at these places. So when we think about Guantanamo Bay, when we think about these places of torture and inhumane, where inhumane things are happening, they're actually happening already here on U.S. domestic soil, right here at home. A few miles going towards Las Vegas, right? So just to put things into context. So if you ever drive to Las Vegas, you're passing really close by the Adelanto immigration camp. So again, like there's a lot of inhumane. Another thing that I wanted to mention when it comes to Adelanto Detention Center, and that's something that I need to post, is that they're using very harmful, clean liquids to sanitize the building, but these liquids are basically emitting gases that are extremely toxic, and many people are getting sick because they're using these gases, these chemicals. And just I want people to think about that. And I don't want to make comparisons to other times in history, but the situation, the things happen, the things inside of these detention immigration camps are pretty horrible. And that's one thing that we should not accept. We should not accept the fact that children and parents, they're still being separated. There's still thousands of children who are unaccounted for.
That is always so bizarre to me, because they separate families, they take their children, and then the children end up in our system, meaning they end up in foster care, undocumented, in a system that is not set up for them to ever be, have adjust their immigration status. And then they just go from family to family until what? This is what people don't understand. And if you like what you're here, and if you have friends, or please share this message. Go ahead and send this to people that need to hear this. because a lot of folks that are well intended don't understand this aspect of the immigrant experience and the immigrant resistance and the struggle. They love their tacos and they love our dances and they love the women and they think we're exotic and all that crap. But they fail to really understand their part when they don't stand up to support us, and when they don't stand up against the separation of families or against secure communities or not supporting DACA. So when you're not standing to support DACA, you're also not really standing for what you love, really, So it's important to remember that also in terms of the detention center, there's a huge machinery behind it that is driven by money.
Yes, big time.
We talked about the political aspect. We talked about the humane aspect. We need to talk about the money that is fueling this, which is that a lot of jails and detention centers are private, and they make money out of keeping you there. So it becomes a business.
Absolutely.
To keep you, to not adjust your status, just to send you through the system.
Yes, absolutely. And when it comes to the money being funneled into this system, there are 5 companies that are responsible for these, I believe owning 50% of all immigration detention centers / immigration camps in the United States. The ones that I know for sure are 2. One of them is called the GEO Group, and the other one is Core Civic. And over the years, they've changed their names because they realized that, we found out who they were and we began
bad publicity for them.
Yeah, bad publicity. So they keep changing their names. And they actually have offices. I believe the GEO Group, they have an office here in Century City, really close to LAX. They have offices nearby. And what these places do, they funnel a lot of money also into bribing politicians. And
politics, right?
Yes, it's important to remember that they are able to maintain power, and also they are able to maintain funding by lobbying Washington, specifically, Republican GOP candidates, but also Democrats. And there's been Democrats who have accepted money from them in the past.
It's disgusting. Nobody is a saint on this issue, guys. I don't believe it. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, Senator Schumer from New York has accepted money from them in the past. And these people are definitely not allies of the immigrant rights movement, despite of what they might say on television, on social media. They've done very shady things in the past. So these companies, in addition to being extremely horrible companies, they funnel a lot of that money into bribing and lobbying politicians. And then, the other thing that I want to say is that these corporations should not exist. Right. They benefit from having people in detention. So their interest is not in releasing immigrants, it's in maximizing the number of people that they detain. In fact, let's look at the cost of having one person in detention per night. If I'm not mistaken, and I'm going to be very conservative because I know the number's probably higher, I think it costs about $700 to detain and hold one person in these detention centers every day. No, a night, exactly. So think about that number, $700 to have to hold an undocumented immigrant a night in one of these places.
And in an average, if somebody is in a detention center, in an average, how long do they stay detained?
Okay, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question, but what I can tell you is from the people that I work with, if they don't have legal representation, if they don't have community organizations, community leaders, consistently and constantly advocating from them from the outside, then those people, from my experience, they end up spending the most time in these detention centers, because one thing to remember is that they benefit, financially from having people as long as they can inside and trapped in those places.
Yeah,
So they're
because
not
also
going to release them. Mhm.
to see a judge, I mean,
Correct.
it takes time, and then they move you
Mhm.
from place to place, and if you're a
Correct.
woman, they send you to other places. I remember back
Absolutely.
maybe 10 years ago when I was doing more when I was working for the Pico Network,
Mhm.
doing immigrant rights work.
Mhm.
Our campaign was about the impoundments. You talked about earlier
Yeah.
how the police used to put checkpoints in front of schools,
Yeah.
random, and they will impound people's cars for up to a month. And a lot of
Yeah.
times people will lose their property because they will be
Absolutely.
scared so much with secure communities and such.
Mhm.
And we had, I remember particularly a case of a woman that she stopped to ask the police for directions, and they
Mhm.
told her where to go and follow her and apprehended her, and she
Wow.
ended up in the system and ended up getting deported, and her
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
stayed here. So that happens. She was not committing a crime. She was not
Mhm.
doing anything wrong. She literally stopped and asked the police for directions. How messed
Mhm.
up is that? And she
Pretty messed
went
up.
from place to
Mhm.
place to until she was basically processed.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do know that it's not a week-long process.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I'm thinking about my friend Maxima Guerrero. She is a DACA recipient in Phoenix, Arizona. About about a month ago, she went less than a month ago. She went to this rally, and she was a legal observer at this rally in Phoenix, Arizona, and the police, they knew who she were, and other legal observers as well. They went ahead and arrested her, and even though she's a DACA recipient, they didn't care. They went ahead and ICE placed a hold on her. She was detained. She was sent to a detention center in Arizona. And thanks to the community that she's part of and all these
Mhm.
different activists, we were able to pressure for the sheriff and also for her to be released. But she was released with an ankle monitor, and these ankle monitors, they're pretty heavy devices that are placed around your ankle, and
Yes.
you have to be basically stuck to the wall to charge them very often. One important thing to note about these ankle monitors is that the government, these privately held, detention centers, these companies, they force you to pay for the ankle monitor between $400 to $500 a month, and they don't care. So, correct, yeah. So that's how they make money. So one important thing to note when it comes to the role that money plays is also the role of tech companies and the role
Mm.
in creating these, the technology
Devices, technology.
exactly that helps in oppressing, criminalizing, and incarcerating people, specifically Black and brown folks and
That
indigenous
is
folks.
crazy.
Um, and that's one thing that I learned about several years ago when we were helping this person to come out from the Adelanto detention center. Keep in mind, this person is undocumented. They don't have, a work permit. Yet the judges, they're like, yeah, we're gonna, give you an ankle monitor, and you have to pay us every month $500 so that you can have this ankle monitor, right? So we had to fundraise money for those people to pay for that. But
And
that's another thing that yeah.
that's maybe a good segue to talk about what are the organizations doing good work. I saw somebody in the comments mentioning
Yeah.
that an organization Raíces in Texas, they are
Okay.
beautiful. I know
Yeah.
Raíces, they're wonderful.
Just a
We have
disclaimer. I work for Raíces. I'm the senior software developer, but I'm
there
here
you go.
in this stream as at a personal capacity, and I do not speak for Raíces. But it's important to know that Raíces is doing amazing work.
They do wonderful work.
Yeah.
Here in Los Angeles, there are a few organizations. Chirla does beautiful work with immigrants. They do really good work.
Yeah, another one is Al Otrolado. Al Otrolado is another nonprofit, also based here in LA, and they also have people on the other side of the border, and they're doing incredible work. Al Otrolado, they've done a lot of important things. They have sued. They always sue the federal government, and they won several of those cases in court. And they're also representing people, specifically people seeking asylum, refugees, and for those people that live in LA and they're looking forward to help, and perhaps make a financial contribution to a local nonprofit, I recommend Otrolado.
Al otro lado, Carecen here in LA is
as well.
another one.
Absolutely.
But guys, don't let. So if you're gonna donate, that's wonderful. Please go ahead and do that. Every little bit helps. But more importantly, we need to organize.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's true.
We need to definitely organize. We need to learn how we can be effective. How can we bring down Citizens United, which is allowing money and politics, all these special interests that are not helping us. They're not helping us. We see it from the police, for the police union, the police league, and their leg that donates money to the detention centers that also build detention centers that are pouring crazy money into the political campaigns and politicians around the United States. So yes, donate your money and also donate your time. Organize money and organize time, and organize people is something that we need to really work on and get more educated. So DACA was, I guess, saved last week by the Supreme Court. Tell us about that. What happened last Thursday?
So the court decision, the Supreme Court decision on DACA, is important to note that that decision is not on the constitutionality of DACA, but rather on the excuse and reasons used by the Trump administration to try to terminate it. So essentially what the Supreme Court said was, they said, we're not here to determine whether it's constitutional or not. Essentially, this case that reached our desk is about whether the Trump administration went through the right process to try to terminate it. And the Supreme Court essentially said the Trump administration did not follow the right procedure to try to end DACA. In other words, they basically left it open for the Trump administration to try again. So in other words, what that decision do, it only bought us time. It only extended the time that we have to fight back. Maybe a couple of months, maybe more than a year. We know that at the moment that the Trump administration, which they already announced actually immediately the day after the decision, Trump went onto Twitter and said, yeah, I'm going to try to take it away. I'm going to submit more evidence and I'm going to try to take it away.
Because it's a political stint. It really is.
It is.
It really is.
Absolutely. So he's trying to use DACA beneficiaries as a way to push for his white supremacist agenda.
And to fuel his base. That are anti-immigrant, anti-black, and anti-person of color immigrant. Exactly. They're not anti-white immigrants, because when you ask them about Canadians, they love Canadians.
Yeah. Or when you ask them about what's her name, Melania Trump, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What about her? Perfect example. What about her parents? You talk about chain migration. That's a perfect example.
Oh my God. Yeah, but I guess I have another question here for us. I totally forgot. I've been neglecting my question. Okay. So it says, can you please talk about the detention centers? We have been going. Okay, so we responded to that. You got the detention center question down. Has Joe Biden reached out to the Latinx community? All his talk about restoring the soul of America.
It's bullshit if he does not address these issues, correct? VP Deporter-in-Chief, Shane. Yeah, I agree with that statement. One thing that I definitely want to, before I talk about Joe Biden, but I definitely want to expand a little bit more on DACA, because just in case if there's any DACA recipients currently on the live, is to say that, again, the Supreme Court decision also opened the possibility for new applications to be accepted. And at the current moment, we're waiting on USCIS to publish more information about that. But we're also asking people to put pressure on the USCIS director to make that process available. Because now with the Supreme Court decision, everything should be, back to the way it was before September 5th, 2017, which means that DACA recipients, specifically undocumented immigrants who have never applied for DACA, but who are eligible to apply for DACA, should be able to submit applications to get DACA. And for those people that have DACA at the moment, but have not renewed their application, they should be looking forward to renew their application. Then there's another component called advanced parole. And advanced parole originally was attached to DACA, which allows DACA recipients to be able to travel outside of the United States under certain conditions. So that's another thing that I wanted to mention, just for people to stay informed, stay updated. And right now it's not 100% clear how USCIS is going to move forward. But what we know is that they should absolutely accept new applications for DACA. Now moving to the Joe Biden statement, it's important to know that Joe Biden, was vice president under Obama, and one thing that it took a long time for him to, talk publicly and accept publicly is the fact that under the Obama administration, more than 3 million people were deported.
The most deportations.
Exactly. And in fact, a friend of mine, Carlos Rojas, he confronted Biden, I believe, last November at a town hall somewhere in Ohio, I believe. And in this town hall, my friend was, confronting Biden and telling him, "Hey, are you going to, own up to the fact?
Step up."
Exactly, step up." And essentially, Biden told my friend Carlos, "If you don't like it, you should vote for Trump." So I guess on the question, exactly. So I mean, when it comes to doing the work of
that's not very promising.
Exactly, it's not very promising. So not to go too much into this topic of Biden, I guess one question that I like to ask people is, do we really need Biden? Like, come on,
the problem, and we don't have a lot of time. We have 6 minutes left, but the problem is that we have a president that is completely inept.
Exactly.
That has treated this pandemic in the worst way. That has recklessly wrecked our economy.
Exactly.
That treats people like animals. That I, in so many ways, don't even know what to say. I don't know. I mean, not being fit for office is an understatement.
Yeah, it's an understatement. Yeah. Correct.
Then we have Biden, and then that's what we got.
Yes.
Because we didn't play our cards right from the beginning.
But it's one thing that I like to say is that there's also a establishment that work very hard to have him. Exactly.
They're also part of the system that we talked about at first.
Exactly.
They are perpetrating white supremacy. They are making laws to make corporate America thrive out of the backs of people that are in need and that are that don't have the protections that they deserve as basic humans.
Exactly. Yeah.
All of this is happening. They're letting all these complexes to be built. They are charging people for it. We're paying with our taxes for it. Undocumented people are paying taxes. Somebody was asking earlier how undocumented people pay taxes. They paid sales taxes. And since I came to this country at 18 years old, I've been paying taxes. And I became a legal resident and an American citizen later. And for years I paid taxes and I didn't see any money back.
Yeah.
So and also a lot of them get paid by check and they get taken off their taxes as well. So
absolutely.
these systems are all working together. And I'm sorry whether you are blue, green, yellow, whatever it is that you believe in and your particular political party is. I'm sorry to tell you, but they're not on our side. So we have to work with each other. We have to, community has to have each other's back. We talked about some really amazing organizations that are working to support immigrants and the immigrant rights movement and the immigrant rights experience. Mm-hmm. And don't forget that when some folks, or we are asking and demanding to defund the police, that's also asking to demanding to envision an immigrant system, and immigration system that is also better, that it actually makes sense, that works and protects us.
Correct. Absolutely.
So we have to end. Everybody's having so many questions. We have to end. Yeah. But I want to just give you a few minutes to leave us with what is your hope now for for this, I guess, for this season, this summer, and for what's happening with, like the immigrant rights movement. What's the hope? How can we leave folks that are listening with a little more hopeful news or something hopeful that they can do?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer, but I'll do my best in a few sentences. So I'm very hopeful of younger people, and also very hopeful of what the movement for Black Lives has been able to achieve in the last couple of weeks. Yes. And, I'm very inspired by all the Black-led organizations, or all the Black activists, all the people rising up all over the country. So I'm hopeful, and I'm inspired by all those young people that are not only, protesting and marching out in the streets, but also by the millions of people that are using digital tools to, play and fight against the system. A perfect example, what happened recently to Trump's rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. All these K-pop stans and TikTokers ruining his rally. So yeah, I'm very hopeful of the people that are rising up and speaking out in many different ways, via protesting in person, online, whatever they're deciding to use. So yeah, I'm hopeful.
Well, I have 2 more minutes before Instagram kicks me out. Yeah. Thank you so much, Justino, for being with us. I mean, the conversation always continue, guys. We'll have to bring Justino again to a live stream. You guys all know where to reach me. Please share this message with a friend, with somebody that needs to hear it. Post it on your social media. Make sure that it is amplified and that more people get educated, joins the dialogue, and we can act together. So if you guys want more information about how to get involved, you can go to the link in my bio. Some of you know my website, and I'll be posting it on my social media as well. Thank you, Justino, for joining us.
Thank you, Aura.
Very soon, and congratulations for all of the work that you've done. And we're here with you.
Thank you, Aura. Appreciate it.
All right, bye, Instagrammers here. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
And in the meantime, let me end the conversation here on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for joining us. That was Justino Mora with a real conversation about the resistance and the immigration edition. As you know, you can always go to the bit.ly, Get Involved LA, and join our efforts to organize, to educate more people, and to bring more action and to make our world better. So have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.